Welcome to the Flower Files, where we plant stories and grow conversations. I'm your host, Liza Getz, flower farmer, florist, educator, and founder of Wildly Native Flower Farm and the Flower Files podcast. Each week on the Flower Files, we dive into the world of flower farming, gardening, floral design, local flowers, small business, and the people who make this industry so incredibly special. So whether you're a flower farmer, a gardener, a florist, a flower enthusiast, or someone dreaming about turning a passion into a business, you're in the right place. Before we jump into today's episode, I have a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying the Flower Files and you're listening on YouTube, please take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a fellow flower lover. Those simple actions help more gardeners, growers, florists, and flower enthusiasts discover the show. You guys already know what to do. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to follow the podcast and leave a review. It truly helps us continue bringing your conversations, ideas, and things that educate, inspire, and connect our flower-loving community. Now grab your coffee, step into the garden, and let's get growing. So what if I told you the biggest threat to pollinators isn't a lack of flowers? It's that we've removed almost every other part of their habitat. Today, we're talking about bees, butterflies, moths, beetles, bats, birds, caterpillars, dead stems, messy gardens, nighttime lighting, modern landscaping, and why some countries are actually beginning to require wildlife habitat in new construction. Because if we truly want to help pollinators, we have to think much bigger than a packet of wildflower seeds and planting flowers just in a highway median. So everyone knows bees. You say pollinator and most people immediately think honeybee. Most people are familiar with the bees and how they work, and that makes sense. They're all around us and there's a lot of social media about it. The honeybee is responsible for pollinating about 70 to 80% of all of our crops. So all of our flowering crops. And that translates, I had to look it up, but that translates into about 20 billion, B with a B, billion dollars in overall ag production. So that translates, how do you take that big number and translate it into something that makes sense? That's roughly 1 out of every 3 bites of food that you consume is responsible for getting to you because of a honeybee and its pollination. That's a huge responsibility for a tiny bee. So while they're a huge focus, obviously, there are other pollinators that matter just as much. So let's take a look and talk about everybody else. I started to dig into this a little bit and wanted to know more about the native bees in Maryland because everybody knows the honeybee is European and is an import. So how is anything being pollinated before they got here? In Maryland alone, there are over 400 native bees. 400. I had no idea. There's bees that come in a huge variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. From the little bright green guys that you see once in a while, you can't decide, is that a bee or a beetle or what am I looking at? To those big, fat, and fuzzy bees that kind of bumble around, hence named bumblebee. There's quite a few bee species to actually check out. Most people are shocked to learn that most bees that are native also don't live in a hive. I think there's a misconception where most people think if it's a bee, it lives in a hive or something along those lines. But many are solitary, which means there's no queen, there's no workers, there's no hive, there's nothing. It's just one female bee building nests and raising young. And many of these actually nest underground or in hollow stems, in dead wood, even sometimes in cracks. So there's a lot of different places to be able to find those things. And this actually translates to if you have a perfectly mulched garden, you have removed all of that habitat for them. So you've removed that nesting opportunity. So you're decreasing your bee population by having this perfect garden. So if you're out working the garden, sweating a little, and there's this little bee that comes along and it lands on you, because I'm always outside and sweating. It comes along and they traditionally seem to like my forearm. They'll land on my forearm and I can kind of watch their wings flap a little bit and their abdomens go up and down. That actually is not a bee. That is what's called a hoverfly. And a hoverfly is one of the most, I think, overlooked pollinators, maybe misunderstood as well, because most people think that they're a bee or they're a little afraid of them, or they're sometimes called sweat bees. I was always told, oh, they're sweat bees. They like your salt. I don't know what it was that they liked. They still like on me. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I'm sure you guys feel that too. But they look like bees, but they're actually flies. They're called hoverflies. And many of these species are excellent pollinators, but they come with a bonus. And especially in the garden, their larvae eat aphids. And I don't know about you in your garden, but I have a ton of aphids in my garden. So I depend on those natural bugs and predators to go ahead and eat all of those things. So these guys are awesome because they're both pollinators and pest control. If you've removed all of the leaves that naturally fall, if you have removed all of the stems and sticks, and now you just have mulch in there, another one of my favorite pollinator, actually that is very overlooked, are beetles. Beetles were pollinating flowers well before bees even evolved. There are big beetles like the rhinoceros beetle that has the cool horn out the front. You've got fun little beetles like those longhorn beetles. They're called longhorns because literally the horns on their head are as long as their body. And beetles come in a myriad of shapes, sizes, and colors and are absolutely amazing if you like bugs, like I like bugs. So little beetles, big beetles, and you have the added bonus that most of these guys don't bite or sting. While their legs feel a little funny on you if you pick them up. I'm thinking Japanese beetles in the morning when I'm trying to remove them from the garden. Their little legs on my hands I'm not a fan of. But they usually don't bug you too much, pun intended. Many of these guys are actually responsible for pollinating magnolias, things like spicebush, and where we are here in Maryland, even the pawpaw tree, which is a fruit-bearing tree, which is grown in a swampier place. People rarely think of beetles as a pollinator, but they've been doing that job for literally millions of years. So if somebody says bee, they usually immediately think of honeybee when it comes to pollinators. But another huge pollinator for us is wasps. So while they are characterized in that bee family, they fall into the family of I'm going to run away because they need a little more space and I need space from them. And I definitely think they are a little bit misunderstood. Their streamlined abdomen, body, smooth, just flies through the air. You can hear them depending on the kind of bee it is. There's European hornets that we deal with here on the farm, and there's also cicada killers, which are, they're multiple inches. And when you're out in the morning in the flowers and you're cutting and you've got all kinds of things moving around, you hear the little toads in the flowers at your feet. I can hear them moving some of the leaves. I hear different things buzzing around me. I have definitely ducked many times because I thought it was a wasp and it's actually a hummingbird. So that's a happy little surprise. But the cicada killer and the European hornet definitely are ones that get our attention, and we tend to give them some space. There are nights before large weddings where if I'm trying to load things in the van and I'm trying to get things to work, candles and hard goods and things like that all have lights on. Well, that attracts European hornets, and nothing will clear out that barn faster, literally make people drop to their knees and crawl out of there, than a European hornet or two flying into the shop. We just kind of turn the lights off, open the door, wait for them to buzz back out, and then that usually ends the night. It's not a lot of fun. But when it comes to a wasp, they are technically pollinators. They don't have the fuzz on them that your bumblebee or your honeybee or some of those other bees do. So they're not as efficient. They're more in there knocking it around than actually carrying it around. And actually, fun fact, there's a special species of wasp that pollinates orchids exclusively. So people fear them. I mean, let's face it, their buzz sound is very intimidating. I like to think of these guys just asking for a little more space compared to a bumblebee. But many of these species do pollinate flowers, and they also do a huge job in controlling pests. They don't actively eat nectar the same way a honeybee does, but they collect small insects to feed to their young, which helps the overall insect control. Without wasps, we'd likely have far more pest issues and outbreaks. So another misconception I feel people have is they think of pollinators and they only think of things that are during the day. Your honeybees go to bed at night. Most of your wasps go to bed tonight. Your beetles do go to bed tonight too. They definitely have some type of circadian rhythm that they are part of. But there's an opposite side to this. There's a couple nighttime creatures, and plants have actually evolved to be part of their cycle, or vice versa. I'm not sure the evolutionary path of that, but there are definitely nighttime creatures that go along with the nighttime blooming flowers. Bats, of course, are a pollinator. Bats are misunderstood, feared, and blamed for a lot of disease that if you see a bat, you don't need to run screaming away from. Give them space, and they're not going to get stuck in your hair. One of the most underappreciated pollinators on Earth probably is the bat, because they think of bats in caves and Halloween and decorations, or maybe just mosquitoes, but they really think of them as pollinators. So bats are critical pollinators in many ecosystems all around the world. In desert regions of the Americas, the bats pollinate things and plants such as agave. So agave, anybody like tequila out there? You definitely love bats because they do the pollination for that. The saguaro cactus, the organ pipe cactus, the carden cactus. In fact, without bats, there are many agave species that would struggle to reproduce naturally. They're just not capable without the bats helping them. So bats play a role in maintaining the genetic diversity of the plants used to make products, again, like tequila. And bat-pollinated flowers, they often have a couple traits that are very similar. So first of all, obviously they have to open at night. They are pale or white in color because it makes it easier for them to be seen. They produce a pretty strong fragrance as well, and they offer large amounts of nectar. A bat is obviously much larger than a bee, so it definitely needs much more, it needs much more energy. So it doesn't want to go from little plant, little plant, little plant. It needs a larger nutrition source. So these flowers that the bats work with, they've evolved specifically to attract those nighttime visitors. And bats provide another enormous ecological service. They consume thousands of insects in a single night. That includes pests that would otherwise damage agricultural crops. So they play a huge role across the board in many different things. Unfortunately, as many folks who are into nature already know, bat populations face serious threats from habitat loss, disturbance of roosting sites, and major diseases like the white nose syndrome, which has devastated bat populations across North America. Protecting bats means protecting pollinators, pest control, and basically entire ecosystems. So bats are actually really, really important. Okay, so let's talk about something that is out during the day. I feel like there's a yin and a yang with this. We're going to talk about butterflies and moths. We're going to talk about the butterflies that are the day and the moths that are at night. So I think there's this huge misconception. It almost comes across as a lie. And this is where I personally feel slightly controversial, because remember above, there's over 400 species of bees in Maryland. There's over 150 types of butterflies here too. So talk about diversity. Maryland is a hugely diverse state. People will say, I want a butterfly garden. That's awesome. That's awesome. They'll go to garden centers. They do research online. They get garden plans. There's so many different things that you can do. Even if you go into like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or one of those places to get plants, their tags will even say pollinator-friendly and things like that to really help push the pollinator perspective. What people often mean is, I want adult butterflies, because most of the time you want your garden to be big, lush, fun, and beautiful. Nobody wants the eggs, the caterpillars, the chrysalises hanging, and the leaf damage. But those stages are the butterflies. That's what people kind of miss in the whole process. I've been in garden centers before, and I've overheard conversations from people saying, oh my gosh, I had all of these caterpillars on my parsley. It was awful. I went ahead and I sprayed them all. And I was like, you totally missed the point. You missed the point. Because a butterfly garden without caterpillar damage is often a butterfly garden that isn't reproducing butterflies. So let's talk about the monarch, because there's so much love for this pollinator, and there's been so much focus on having to help it come back, and what do we do, and the numbers are declining. In the East, because there's two sections, because the country is divided by the mountains. So in the East, the populations in both the East and the West are far below the historical norms required to sustain this species in its migration long term. But the good news for the East is the numbers are improving slightly. During the winter hibernation season, scientists have found that monarchs occupied, I looked this up, 7.24 acres of Mexican forest. It was up from 4.4 acres the previous year. And this is the highest population level recorded since 2018. Now, my brain wonders, is it because somehow the monarchs knew that maybe it was going to be a little colder this winter further north, and they knew to push further down where other winters it's been warmer, so they haven't had to migrate down as hard? I don't know how any of that works. There are bigger scientists who can who can study that and tell us more. This episode of the Flower Files is made possible by our sponsors. Bob Bell Chevrolet, helping Maryland drivers stay safe on the road with dependable vehicles and exceptional customer service. Ivingo Creative, providing branding, website design, and marketing solutions that help small businesses tell their story and grow with confidence. And the Tax Chick Pro, helping entrepreneurs, farmers, and small business owners navigate taxes, bookkeeping, and financial planning with less stress and more clarity. We are grateful for their support of the Flower Files and our growing community of flower lovers, gardeners, farmers, and small business owners. But the Western monarch population, the numbers continue to be in steep decline. The Western monarch count is about 12,280 butterflies in coastal California, And this is the third worst year on record for the group. So how do you help? Everyone plants milkweed. They're like, okay, monarchs and milkweed, monarchs and milkweed. I feel like that has been educationally very successful. There's all kinds of projects. You can tag the monarchs. There's lots of different really neat programs. And everybody plants milkweed to help them. And that's great. But many people don't understand the entire cycle. So they plant the milkweed, but they cut it too early, or maybe they spray around it, which is not beneficial at all. They remove the eggs because maybe they're not familiar with what they look like, or they remove the caterpillars, which completely defeats the purpose. Milkweed is the host plant for the monarch. So not only does it need it for food, it also needs it for all of its life cycle. The entire life cycle matters, because nothing excites me more than finding a caterpillar in the garden. I know I'm a nerd, but folks don't always understand what they have and they accidentally kill them. So do your due diligence and understand and identify what that butterfly larva looks like, or what the caterpillar is and what it becomes. You can watch the entire cycle unfold directly in front of you. Caterpillars, some caterpillars feed on dill, parsley, fennel, carrots, and some people think that they're pests. And then they wonder why they never see swallowtails, for example. And the swallowtail actually is a little unique in the fact that these guys have a slightly different defense mechanism. If you pick one up and you hold it and you touch its back, I'm not saying squish it, but just give it a little tap, there are little horns that come out the front, little orange horns that are like, hey, leave me alone. So if you ever find a swallowtail caterpillar, I challenge you to just poke him a little bit to see if you can get those horns to come out. Okay, but before you pick up a caterpillar, absolutely make sure you know which one it is. Because, for instance, the saddleback caterpillar, green caterpillar, has a brown section on its back, a little bit of white around it, literally looks like it has a saddle. It also has spines that for some people actually are skin irritants. So there's a lot of caterpillars that their natural self-defense is to have spines. Some don't do anything, some look fuzzy, but it's just natural. I mean, they have to defend themselves somehow. Okay. Let's talk about moths. The pollinators that work while we sleep, because to me, this is just as fascinating. We talked about bats because they are part of the night shift, but let's talk about the moths. We talked about the day, now we're going to talk about the night. And many flowers have evolved for moth pollination. And notice how many of your night flowers are actually white, because they open at dusk and they become fragrant at night. And examples of these would be moonflower, which is an amazing vine that opens great big huge white flowers with a really nice light scent. There's evening primrose, again, opens at night, beautiful, it has a light scent. Nicotiana, which also opens at night. And these actually aren't accidents. They are biological evolutionary triumphs, because those flowers are just sitting there advertising to moths. They are sitting there saying, hey, pick me, pick me, pick me. Let's take a minute and figure out, we've talked about different plants and we've talked about host plants and we've talked about things that have evolved to open specifically for different species of insects. But the most important section of all of this, the most important conversation we can have, is a nectar plant feeds the adults. A host plant creates the next generation. So, for example, if you have a garden and you have flowers and you have a butterfly that comes in and it visits your zinnias, and that's great. Comes in, visits your zinnias and your cosmos. But if it has nowhere to lay eggs, Your garden is like a gas station on a busy highway. It's not a nursery. They stop by, they pick up what they need, and then they continue on their way. Many native insects require specific host plants, and some can only reproduce on one plant family. And without those plants, the population eventually declines. So if you know what the host plant is, you can then make sure that you have those plants if you're trying to attract a specific insect. For instance, milkweed for the butterfly, dill and parsley and carrots for the swallowtails, spice bush plants for spice bush swallowtails. There's a lot of different host plants, and trees are also host plants. So oak and maple, those are huge host plants as well. So make sure you have a well-rounded approach when you're looking at this. It's not just one specific thing. Okay, so we talked about nighttime and insects. I want to talk a little bit about artificial light, because here's where it gets a little bit interesting. There has been more and more research that shows that artificial lighting disrupts a lot of parts of the natural cycle for insects. It messes with their navigation. They can't figure out where to go because it's supposed to be dark, and all of a sudden it's light and there's light over there. And does that mean the sun's coming up? It just really messes with them, which then messes with their ability to feed, and then their ability to mate, and their pollination behavior. And some studies suggest nighttime pollinators can drop dramatically around bright lighting. It keeps them away. So we spend thousands of dollars creating these pollinator gardens, and then we leave floodlights on at night, or we leave lights on all over the place, and it just messes with the nighttime insects. It can also affect the bat population, and bat species naturally are going to avoid those well-lit areas, which can reduce their ability to forage and even move throughout the landscape. It's very confusing them. On the flip side of this, trying to understand how light would work, but targeted light. So I feel like this is a two-prong approach here. If you have lights and you just constantly keep them on, and you have a floodlight on, and you have a pollinator garden, you don't want that floodlight really focused on your pollinator garden, because you're going to mess with your natural insects at night. Using this technology, ag is shifting a little bit. And for instance, there is new research that's being pioneered through the University of Florida. I saw this and I thought it was really cool, actually. They're using a UVC light, which is basically lasers and lamps at night, to safely eliminate a disease called powdery mildew, two-spotted spider mites, which are they're actually in the spider family and very difficult to kill, and chili thrips on strawberries. And thrips are a teeny tiny little insect that goes into a flower and eats the nectar, and they're massive once they get established if you don't control them. This new technology with these lights. They're on a U shape, and the lights shine, and they go down the aisle or the row, and it's completely chemical free. It's more of a physical control. It kills pest eggs, and it really doesn't affect the plant yield. So they go down through the middle of the night. It kills these diseases and insects, and leaves behind a space for beneficials afterward to come in and clean up anything that was missed. It's a little different than a drone. It's kind of, from what I was able to watch and see, it almost reminds me of a Roomba, where it's just going over the top, but it's given a specific path, and it's told to stay within this grid. The technology has moved beyond the manual tractor and the rig and all of the pest species being treated that way, and the robots have been able to be used in field trials, again, for strawberries in Florida. The strawberry, the strawberry population or the strawberry, it's like Florida's strawberry population is billions of dollars, just billions of dollars. So anything that they can do to decrease pesticides and do it a little bit differently is huge for this. And they're getting ready to actually start some of these trials in California as well. So there's a really neat cross here with some of that new technology. If you're not familiar with it, check it out in the show notes. All right. So we've talked about pollinators, we've talked about bats and birds and landscapes and all of that kind of stuff. I want to take a second and chat just a tiny little bit about birds, because birds and insects are totally interdependent. People love birds, birds need bugs, and many songbirds feed caterpillars to their babies. Thousands of them, literally. One chickadee family may require thousands of caterpillars during nesting season. No caterpillars, fewer birds. And this is why native plant advocates talk so much about insect biomass. You have to have a certain biomass to support everything. In these 3 acres that I farm right here with flowers, the species of birds that I have is so diverse in the little 3 acres that I have compared to the farm fields that are literally less than 100 feet away on one side and a little further away on the other side. I know I have a much more diverse plant species habitat, but the incredible diversity that I see from the flowers, literally goldfinches to kingbirds, which are a new species of flycatcher that's now here on the farm. I've never seen them before, and I'm literally obsessed. The purple martins and all of the birds that are indigo buntings and all of these really cool, amazing birds, bluebirds. I can't even describe what the difference is. And I could talk about birds for hours. Bird nerd, sorry. I'm sure you can tell. And it all stems back from this perfect garden perspective. Modern landscaping has become so sterile. My God, some people even use rocks. So if you're at the beach, I totally understand that. Or if you're going for a beach theme, I understand all of the different styles. But when we're looking at it from a perspective of pollinators and having a good habitat, that's where I say I don't understand the rocks. We remove dead wood, leaf litter, seed heads, hollow stems, bare ground. There's nothing available anymore. And these are literally habitats. It's not debris. Your pollinator-friendly garden should look messy. This is your permission to have a messy garden. And anybody who comments on it, you can tell them you're supporting the pollinators. Nature isn't tidy. She's not neat. When was the last time you saw a salamander just in your garden? Or a skink? Or ever even heard of them because you saw them and you had to go figure out what they were? They are slowly disappearing, and it's awful. They're losing their habitat. And while they may not be pollinators, those habitats are part of their ecosystem, and they eat the insects that are part of their food web. So in a way, they are connected to the same healthy habitat that the pollinators need. And don't forget those bats and birds. Many bats rely on old trees, cavities, loose bark, bridges even, barns, and other structures for roosting. And when landscapes become overly manicured and every dead tree is removed, I feel like we are removing that important habitat as well. So what do you do? If you're listening to this episode and you're saying, I want to do something, I want to improve my garden, I want to plant things for pollinators, perfect. But let's be honest, pollinator marketing is everywhere. Pollinator seed mixes, pollinator signs, pollinator plant tags. And sometimes that's good, especially for people who are just learning. But sometimes it can come across as greenwashing. And for those of you who don't know what greenwashing is, I'm not talking about painting a wall green. Greenwashing is this deceptive practice of making false or misleading claims about environmental benefits of a product, service, or even like a company practice. It's used for capitalization on consumer demand for eco-friendly goods while still holding some harmful environmental practices. So it's a very gray area. Hey, we're doing all of these really great things, but I'm increasing the stream water temperature. Like it can be very, very tricky. So you have to be really, really careful that is it just a nectar source or is it also creating some type of habitat? Because there really is a difference. You want a nursery, you don't want a highway. This issue is across the world. So pollinators feed us because of the jobs that they do. So it's not just here in America. It's something that is being looked at and communicated about across the world. And Europe actually has a really cool spin on it. And in parts of Europe, new developments, new construction, they require swift bricks. Swifts are a type of bird that nest in cavities, so there's special bricks for that. There's bat bricks, so encouraging bats to nest right in these bricks. There's nesting cavities, there's green roofs, there's wildlife corridors, there's special types of bricks for bees. That's actually really interesting. These are built-in structures that are provided for roosting opportunities directly within buildings, helping offset that habitat loss caused by development. And I think this is one of those spaces where you could maybe say, well, some of this could be greenwashing, and it could be if it's not done correctly. But the question soon becomes, should wildlife habitat be optional or should it just be part of development? Because imagine if every new development that goes in, if you had to put in habitat that supported pollinators and natural ecosystems that were there ahead of time, just as much as you plan to put in a sidewalk. That would completely change the entire way that new construction is done. So instead of a homeowners association or an HOA with rules about grass blades and gardens that are mulched, maybe they should include rules about expectations of gardens being messy and eco-friendly with encouragement of biodiversity and habitat creation. So clover instead of grass, for example. Clover actually, before the wide use of broadleaf pesticides, was used as lawns because it grows in full sun and part shade. And it's a super efficient lawn cover. Imagine if everyone planted clover instead of grass, what it would be for pollinators. So what can you do tomorrow? If you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I definitely want to do something here. And I'm not saying anything that's expensive or complicated. Leave some leaves. That's super easy and that doesn't cost you anything. Leave some leaves, leave some stems standing. If you're going to cut things down, cut them down, but leave a good foot at least above. Leave it there. Plant the host plants. Figure out what you want and plant those host plants. Obviously, reduce your pesticides. Look at your beneficials as much as possible. Add some water, and that could be a simple dish with a couple stones in it so that the pollinators have a place to land. Turn off those unnecessary night lights or lights at night. And you could consider installing a bat house if it's appropriate for your region. That's a simple thing. It may take a little time for them to figure it out. You want to protect your old trees when it is safe to do so. And if a tree falls down, you don't have to clean it up right away. It's okay to have some dead wood for things to live inside. And accept some damage in your garden. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Flower Files. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please take a moment to follow the podcast, leave us a review, and share this episode with a friend, a fellow gardener, a flower farmer, a florist, or just a flower lover. Your support helps us continue bringing more stories, more education, more inspiration to the flower community. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can hit that notification bell and never miss an episode. All of those things really do make a difference. You can find show notes, resources, and more flower-filled inspiration at Wildly Native Flower Farm. And be sure to connect with us on social media to continue the conversation. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and keep sharing the beauty that flowers bring to the world. This is the Flower Files, where we plant stories and grow conversations.